the digital currencies and electronic money, and sometimes they are also experienced as something really artificial, because mostly people, of course, are used to real money, used to circulate real money, paper money, something of the sort. But we are absolutely are not sure whether we can go deeper into digitization in money circulation, whether we should decentralize, or it's going to be a centralized system altogether. So there are many difficult issues to be decided and to speak about, and my presentation today deals in particular with model of some sort of a shared digital currency that's going to have shared interest rates and shared money market and things such as these. We have already spoken today about sharing economy, this economy, is it possible actually to have something, to share something? It seems that we really have many things to share. Car share or flat share and many other things. When we speak about money, actually, I think that money is the most shared good of all, because it is neutral to all the things that we've got. Money is very impersonal, and actually sometimes I feel like we can use a digital currency for a group of countries so that they could share the risks, they could share some valuations, and also maybe omit other currencies from their transactions altogether. For example, people are talking about omitting US dollars and use instead some other currency, or at least the BRICS countries are speaking about some pentalateral relations that could be very helpful in exporting and importing goods in a digital currency that would be impersonal, that would be not individual, that would have no national specifics about this currency, and that would be looking more like the euro currency, the currency euro in the European monetary system. When I try to develop this model for a digital currency and a shared interest rate, I of course I was thinking about the coronavirus crisis, and I thought that before the coronavirus crisis, the monetary systems of the BRICS countries were too different. They had two varying interest rates, the rates of refinancing. For example, Brazil had the rate of refinancing close to 14%, India and South Africa 7 or even 8%, Russia over 10%. And when you're thinking about harmonizing these interest rates, because to share something you got really to share, you got to harmonize various things, you got to harmonize the monetary system. And I'm not sure whether this currency, whether this economic policy is going to be really harmonizing and also can be shared, because in order to share something in terms of economy, the countries should have very similar economic indicators in terms of gross domestic product, in terms of money supply, and in many other things. And the effects of these currency negotiations and currency transactions is going to be very difficult for countries to use and very difficult to employ. If we are talking about other specific issues, for example, like I said before about this harmonization process, so before the coronavirus crisis, there was, I think, there was an impossibility, something impossible about sharing economic policy in the BRICS countries. If you look at this chart with interest rates in the BRICS at the time before 2020, you see that they were too different to be harmonized. And if you do that gradually, if you did that gradually before, for example, if you take some 10 years from now to go for this harmonization process, it's going to take at least several stages, a dozen stages to lower these interest rates in order to come to some sort of shared interest rate. So it's going to be a very long period. But when coronavirus crisis began and the economies of the world, China, India, the United States, Russia, and many other countries in the world started introducing some fiscal stimulus, because GDP really slumped in 2020, and that was a very dramatic slump in growth dynamics in the BRICS. Of course, we are expecting some sort of a rebound in 2021, maybe 2022, but still the thing is that it's going to be very difficult to come from this crisis. But what is very interesting about the current situation is that suddenly these things I was talking about, these interest rates, became very, very close to each other. So maybe this coronavirus crisis is a very good thing to start sort of a integration process of the impossibility. Sometimes we're talking about the impossibility of a union between countries different, such as the BRICS countries. But in these days, I feel like we've got something really to share. We've got the same problem to deal with. We've got a very similar macroeconomic policies to be used. Because we all started using more digital transactions, we started using more digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, other electronic ways of payment. We also introduced many economic stimulus plans that are very much the same in many countries. And I thought that that thing is going to be very, very a good starting point for some sort of integration process between these countries. Of course, the model is a model, and besides economic perspectives, besides some reasons and some common grounds, you got to have some sort of political will behind these models. Not only there should be some economic indicators showing some sort of shared economic trajectory, but you've got to have a common political will, and this common political will is something we really lack in the world economy today. There are many models and scenarios to introduce to harmonize this digital process. There are shock therapy scenario and gradual scenario, and these things were considered in my presentation. And actually, the idea is that I really strongly support the gradual model of introducing this currency, because when you introduce something very suddenly and unexpectedly, the system is going to collapse due to increasing debt and due to unwillingness on part of the people to use these shared things. So this process should be really slow and gradual. You got to introduce it really by stages, and being very slow about these issues. And if you try to understand the reality between and some dynamics between the currencies of these BRICS economies, their national currencies, Brazilian reals, and all other currencies, I try to calculate the correlation coefficients between them, and what I found is that for example, Brazilian real and Russian ruble really correlate very, very tight. There is a very tight correlation between these two currencies, although they're very, very different and very, very distant from each other. I don't want to say that it's a perfect reason to start an integration or harmonization process, because model is still a model, but in economic terms, maybe there are some sort of background for an optimal currency to create for at least a number of these countries. Maybe Brazil and South Africa, which really sounds impossible, something of impossibility. Also, according to the model introduced and analyzed, we can expect a second slowdown in economic activity by some 2025. Maybe that's going to happen due to this prolonged economic crisis, and also always thereafter, as some sort of a rebound, there should be some bouncing back, and maybe the economies will return to a more general pattern in their growth rates. So we got also to take that into consideration when thinking about harmonizing their activities. I also tried to simulate this digital currency of the BRICS, and here you can see the dynamics, the average dynamics of the BRICS currencies, and the BRICS digital currency dynamics that changes on the daily basis from January the 1st, 2019 to the end of the year. And what we can see here is that the digital currency in simulation, in the simulated model, started growing in value. It really appreciated against the US dollar by the end of 2019. Of course, I did not try to measure these things in 2020 because there were too many fluctuations, and I thought that was a thing of impossibility to try to measure and simulate the currency in these very chaotic environment, because it was like a financial tsunami that was coming in March, and in April in particular Russian ruble devalued and other currencies devalued. Brazilian reals and Indian rupee and South African rands, they all devalued, and the model to be constructed on the basis such as this would be looking and sounding unnatural. So I tried to simulate it based on more retrospective data. Coming to the end of this research, I would like to say that I would like to stress that it is very important to take a gradual approach. Like I said before, it is very important to take a very cautious and gradual approach in dealing with the hypothetical digital currency for any country, maybe not only for the BRICS but also for Russia or China, because there are talks about Russia, a digital ruble and digital yuan, but still we do not have theoretical and practical plans. We do not have some programs and projects, how it's going to look like, what is going to be the basis, who is going to be the monetary authority that will be responsible for the issue of this currency. And there are too many questions, too many issues to be decided, to be solved before we come to a project of a digital ruble, at least in Russia, or a digital yuan in China. The system of digital money circulation, of course, is not perfect, but we believe that with digitization process going forward, we will have more opportunities to invest more money into this research and try to develop a sort of a plan for the future. Thank you very much. If you've got some questions, I'm ready to answer them.
Yes, very much. I have a question. Yes, could I ask a question? Yes, yes, of course. My question is, just now we do not have common currency for BRICS countries, as for example, European Community has euro. Do you think the digital currency for BRICS could be implemented and introduced without non-digital common currency for these BRICS countries?
I believe that a digital currency of the BRICS can be introduced in pentalateral transactions, to use it to just to make exports and imports possible from these countries, so that we could really transact in these currency on the pentalateral basis. Without any international use, because I don't think that the United States or the European Union are going to think about this currency or implement it for their use. First, we got to use it on the pentalateral basis before we launch it to a worldwide global use, which is a thing of a much longer, larger time frame, larger perspective, I think, from this point of view.
And my next question is, don't you think about digital dictatorship of dollar, for example, or maybe yen? Would be there some kind of domination of specific national digital currency in the global markets?
Well, I think that the US dollar dominates the world economy and the international monetary system, even without a digital currency. I think that is the reason why they are not talking about a digital dollar. In the United States, they do not think that such a currency could be of any use, and this is the responsibility of the United States on parts of the global community, because we may criticize the United States for many things, for some unfair trade deals, for unfair policies, but in general, what I think about the US dollar is that this currency is a sort of a unified financial language, so that we can speak and understand each other in global trade and in global finance. And without such a currency, I think globalization would not go further. So this is the basis of the financial system, and certainly some sort of a combination or a currency basket of the major currencies in the world would help stabilize the financial system. We should not really destroy the system which we are living in today. We should really keep it and try to reform it. Try to find a flexible way of coming to another sort of international monetary system that would be more fair and just.
Thank
Thank you. We do not hear you.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Mikhail. Does anybody have more questions about this very important and interesting topic? Then my recommendation again to write in the chat, and thank you very much, Mikhail, for your contribution.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.